Today on Between the Lines, I'm sitting down with Flynn Novak, the debut novelist of Pucku. We'll talk about her writing process and her journey from Wattpad to publishing. Let's get into it. You've written a book, we all know it, on Wattpad, and now it's been edited into a full live book that we're all going to get our hands on. I obviously want to ask you all about it, how you created it, what was in your mind, what it was like editing it after so long. But let's start right at the beginning with, okay, what inspired you to become a writer and how did this whole journey happen?
Yeah, so big question. I don't know if I can pinpoint the exact moment in my life that I knew I wanted to become an author, but I can definitely talk about the journey there. So growing up, my brother and my sister were actually way more into reading than I was. I remember my mom having to sit me down and read the books that I had to read. She had to watch me read the books I had to read for school because I didn't want to. But then around middle school age, my sister started sharing her stories with me, and I learned about Wattpad. And that was kind of my first little nudge into the world of reading and writing. And I have a very vivid memory of one day sitting in class, I believe it was seventh or eighth grade. And I saw this boy who was kind of a known troublemaker, someone who I had never seen pick up a book, let alone turn in a homework assignment. And he was hunched over this book, very intently reading. And so I leaned over and I asked him, I'm what are you reading? And do you like it? And that book was The Hunger Games. And that series was so pivotal in my journey to becoming an avid reader, which in turn, I think, was a huge part of me discovering that I wanted to write my own stories. It made me feel something viscerally that in a way that a book had never made me feel before. I kind of realized that was something that I wanted to evoke in other people in my own writing. And so I think that was one of the big pushes into, realizing that I wanted to write.
That's, it's so beautiful to hear about another book kind of inspiring you to not only become an avid reader, but then go into being a writer. I very much connect with that myself. I was not a big reader growing up. For me, being dyslexic, you see a book and you're no. That's just not for you. But I kind of had the same experience. I had just one story, one book that sparked something in me and said, oh, wait, maybe this reading thing is a little bit more fun than it looks.
Yeah, it only takes one book. I know everyone says it, but it really truly does. It only takes one book.
No, absolutely. Now, obviously, talking about your siblings' experience in writing, I'm curious to know your Goodreads bio. It does credit your older sister, Flynn Novak, who has written My Life with the Walter Boys, for kind of giving you that little spark of inspiration. What has it been like in that sibling dynamic and that sibling support now that you're a writer yourself?
It's been really incredible. My sister played such a big role in my journey becoming an author. Before she started, like I said, before I started reading her stories and started reading, I didn't really spend any of my free time reading and writing. And granted, I was pretty young, but when she opened up to me and told me about My Life with the Walter Boys, it was this secret special thing that we shared between us. And it really brought us together. And at the time, there's a 6-year age gap between us. And now that doesn't feel like anything. But at the time, we were sharing a room. Growing up, we butt heads all the time. And so having that thing to share between the two of us, that was a secret. She hadn't told anyone else. Just, her fans online obviously knew of her. And so that was really a special bond that we, share between us and that we will share for the rest of our lives. But, having her there to be a voice of encouragement was so vital. And she is my sounding board, for my ideas, and I can always work with her through insecurities and doubts in my writing. She's been a huge influence, and I definitely don't think I would be where I am today without her. I don't know if I would have, found that love that I have for reading and writing. We can get together and talk for hours and hours about books and writing and fan fiction and everything. And so it's just this really special bond that we share that, it's wonderful. And I'm really, really appreciative that she kind of brought me into that world because I met so many wonderful people through it.
Wow, that's such a blessing to have such a support team, just there and ready for you. I know for me personally, my mom and dad, they're my support team. They've never written a book, but they are my dad's an avid reader. My mom's dyslexic like me, so she listens to books on CD. That's her favorite thing to do. And so together with them, very similar. They're if I need something to be read, if I need someone to tell it to me, really honest and straight, I give it to them. they take out that red pen, they scratch it all up. I promise it's still good, but like let's tweak a few things. But having that support system as a writer is so, so nice. And having someone tell you, you're doing this right, like the imposter syndrome kind of thing. Like you're doing this right, but like let's tweak on this and kind of have that collaborative energy is such a unique and beautiful thing to get to have.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
I do have to ask now, your title of your book is Pucku. So if anyone can tell, this is a spicy romance and more, it's a spicy, like more of that kind of enemies to lover hockey romance. What inspired you to write that? I love those kind of books, so I got it.
So one thing about me is I love a bold, eye-catching title. The first book I ever posted online when I was like 12 years old was called Selling the Pretty Boy Secrets. I've always wanted a title that is, like stands out and kind of evokes an initial reaction out of someone. And so sometimes I'll come up with a catchy title and then I'll create a story around that. And that is kind of what happened with Pucku. To give a little background, I wrote the first version of it when I was 16 years old. And at the time, it was not spicy. It was just a teen fiction romance. But it definitely is an enemies to lovers still. And I knew that I was interested in writing a sports romance because I played sports my whole life. And my gut instinct at first was to write about rugby because I had just started playing rugby. And it's such an interesting sport. But one day I was trying to come up with something that screamed enemies to lovers, and Pucku just popped into my mind. And that obviously fits with hockey. So I kind of just ran with it and never looked back, even though I had at the time never seen like a full game of hockey. I had no idea about hockey, and it's very apparent in that first draft on Wattpad that I did not know much about hockey. But, eventually when Wattpad approached me about traditionally publishing the story, I knew I didn't want to do it unless I could age up the characters and do a significant amount of rewriting. Mostly because I wanted to be a little bit more reflective of just where I am at in my life. I'm 28 now. I was 27 when I started rewriting it. And so I wanted to age up the characters. And then it really gave me an opportunity to bring in my own experience of playing Division I rugby in college into Grace's storyline as a female athlete. And that was really fun to do. And the new published version is going to be a lot different than the Wattpad version, but I kind of like that because, people who love the original version have that Wattpad version, but then now there's this kind of new version with the same characters, but a different plot line, and they go through these different hardships that I think will be really fun and, touching for people to read.
No, absolutely. I had a really good friend when we were in high school who she was in sports, and she did a bunch of different kinds of sports, and she finally landed on like rowing at the time. And I was shocked by her discipline. I was like, she would get up so early in the morning. She was always at the gym. She was always doing what she needed to. And I always found the discipline it takes to do sports, specifically as a female in sports, it's amazing. It's beautiful. And I could never do it. I am the laziest human on the planet. So congrats to you on that in general of just like your personal discipline. I am curious to know, like, what is it like? Like your discipline is obviously very there, and your mindset just from your own experience in sports. Did that help you in the writing process?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the level of hockey that Grace is playing in the book is a different level that I played in rugby. It was a club sport, and it was still a lot of commitment, on top of school. But even playing high school sports growing up, like that's practice every single day after school, and then games on the weekends, every weekend. It's a lot of time commitment, but it's also so fun. And I'm a very competitive person, so I got so much enjoyment out of being able to, compete with other athletes. And even though at times it's really difficult, I think, when you're in the moment and you have like a really good play or you make a really good hit, like it pays off, all of the, like time commitment, like really, it just like in that one moment, it completely pays off because it's such a fun and exciting experience. And I think with rugby, especially, I played a lot of different sports growing up, and I was fine at them. And I really didn't like find a sport that like I just naturally clicked with until rugby. And it just like, it made sense to me. I don't know, like, one day it just clicked, like other sports didn't click. And so I think there's definitely like a little bit of, sacrifice. You're spending so much time doing something, but it really does pay off if it's something that you love. And that was really excited to bring into Grace's story. And also just kind of this element of, gender inequality within sports. That was something that I got to visit in this version of the book that I didn't visit in the Wattpad version. So that was really fun as well.
I think it's a great thing to show young girls as well. I mean, especially girls who are in college, especially, and a book like this for them. Even though, yeah, it's gonna be a little fun and flirty side of
Yes.
it. But like also at the same time, it is great to show like women in sports. So I love that you combined it both, a little bit of spice and a little bit of depth. Love it.
Yes.
So I am curious to know also, like, what was your favorite scene when writing the book, but also after like going through the edits and finally getting to read it at the very end? Did you have a scene that ended up being your favorite compared to the one that was in the beginning?
Yeah. So I guess this was the first book that I actually wrote spicy scenes for. I had never written spice before. So just diving into that was really fun. And just taking inspiration from other books that I had read. I would say when I was actually writing the book, my favorite scene to write was the epilogue scene at the end, because I just had so much fun taking like little inspirations from, my own college experience and then like my friend's college experience. And so that was really fun. But then reading back the finished version, there's one scene that I just kind of find myself smiling and giggling at, and it's from Sebastian's point of view, and I think it's about like halfway through the story, and it's kind of your first scene between Grace and Sebastian that doesn't feel as heavy and angry. Like it's a little bit more lighthearted, and they kind of have a conversation that is not them being at each other's throats. There definitely is a little bickering, but it's lighthearted, and like you kind of see a little bit of vulnerability in Sebastian and the way he kind of thinks about Grace. And I don't know, it's not anything crazy. It's just one of those scenes that makes me really smile when I read it back. And I definitely hope people feel the same way. And it's also on Halloween, and Halloween is one of my favorite holidays. So being able to write that, add a scene in on Halloween was really fun for me.
No, I love that. Halloween is also one of my absolute favorites. I've been scrolling on Pinterest right now looking at costumes. I'm way behind. Like in my head, like I should have known this by now. So like the panic is setting in. But I do want to like mention your dialogue between your characters. Like speaking on obviously enemies to lovers, I think all the book girlies, when we read that, we like that bickering, we like that banter. And I really love the way that your dialogue was it's very sassy at the same time. And it almost gave humor along with this kind of like enemies to lovers, bickering together. But there was a very humorous element to it as well. So I love the style of dialogue that you create.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I love a sassy character. It's just more fun when they're sassy. So yeah, that's definitely something that I enjoy doing. The dialogue is so fun to write when I'm putting a story together. Absolutely.
Were there authors in your life that, for you personally really kind of like sparked something that said, this is what's making a lasting impact on me, and this is how I want to write? And those people that you look back at and you're like, those are my influences to how I'm writing now.
Yeah, definitely. Such a long list. Obviously, my sister was a huge influence, and the reason I started writing teen fiction. But outside of my sister, some of the books and authors that have really made a lasting impact on me. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. That is still one of my all-time favorite book series. And actually, right after I finished reading that, I immediately ran to my sister, and I was like, I need something else because I finished the trilogy and I have no idea what to do. Again, the world of reading and writing was new to me, and she recommended that I read The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. And those two series really kickstarted my love of, fantasy, dystopian, like sci-fi. I just love escaping into fantastical worlds. I don't actually read a lot of contemporary fiction in my free time. I'm a big series girl. I like ending a book and moving on to the next one. I don't want things to end.
Yep.
And so, those were huge influences on me. The Demon King, which is, I think it's the Seven Realms series by Cinda Chimo, is also a lovely young adult fantasy series. And then, a book series that I read as it was coming out throughout high school and into college, Throne of Glass, that will always have, you know, a really special place in my heart, and made me really, for the first time, think like I want to write a fantasy series. But if I'm thinking about more like recent books that I've read, I really liked The Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor and her other series, Strange the Dreamer. Really fun worlds and fantasy and magic systems. Another recent one is The Road of Bones by Demi Winters, and that is the first book in a series. I think there's 3 books out. One of them is like a side character story. And then just last week, I finished Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and that was such a good story. I loved her writing, and like you were talking about, the dialogue, the banter between her, the 2 main characters was just incredible. I loved that story. And so, I think a lot of those stories, you know, when I think about how they've influenced my writing, a big thing is like the enemies to lovers trope. That will always be like my favorite trope. I love kind of taking 2 characters where there's this tension and bickering and banter that kind of slowly snowballs into attraction and passion. So that's always really fun, and that's something that I like to include in my stories. And then I think another big one is just having a super, you know, outspoken, bold female main character. Katniss was like the first female main character that I read, and she was just very strong and rough around the edges. And like, I remember them kind of just describing her as like, not necessarily unlikable, but like she was outspoken, and that kind of ruffled some feathers. And I love to incorporate that in my female main characters. I love the sass and the banter and the like, I'm not standing down energy. And so that is definitely, you know, I've definitely found that those series have influenced those aspects in Pucku and my writing in general.
Oh, I can absolutely see that throughout the book, those influences in there. And like Mortal Instruments, I can totally connect there. I was a huge Mortal Instruments girl. I remember, I think I was in middle school when I first found the series. I think it was when the movie adaptation had just come out and I had seen it. And Jamie Campbell Bower, oh my God, I was in love, to the point where I got sent to the principal's office because our school gave us laptops at the time that we could use while we were in class, and I had changed the wallpaper, so it was all Jamie Campbell Bower shirtless, mind you, just pictures of him everywhere. And they're like, "Yeah, you can't have shirtless photos of men on your laptop." I learned that at a young age, but
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, no, and that actually kind of reminds me, another trope that I love that was in the original version of Pucku that's not in the new version, or not as much, is love triangles. Love a love triangle.
yes.
Obviously, love triangles are making kind of like a resurging with Walter Boyd's and The Summer I Turned Pretty, but I was like obviously a big Vampire Diaries, Twilight girly. Like, love triangles are so fun if they're done right, and that's obviously present in the Hunger Games and even the Mortal Instruments. So I love a love triangle. More to love, you know.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite like love triangle of all time?
Yeah, Elena, Damon, and Stefan. The Vampire Diaries lives rent-free in my mind. I don't know how many times I've rewatched that. Like, it's just one of those, I don't know, they don't make shows like that anymore. They just don't.
No, I totally agree. And like, especially ones with so many episodes. I have this big thing about the episode lengths right now. Like 8 episodes, why? Why are we
so annoying? They used to have 20 to 40 episodes a season in these TV shows, and they were good. And, you know, it's funny because CW, like, sometimes you think of CW and think of cheesy, but I never felt like the Vampire Diaries was cheesy in the way that some vampire, like, I love Twilight, but, you know, the running and like some of the like effects in Twilight is really cheesy, but the Vampire Diaries, they had it down. They had it. I loved that show.
They had it on point.
Yes.
I was a huge Damon Salvatore girl, but then like when Klaus came on the stage,
Klaus is my number one from that show, and Damon second. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, as it should be. Now I want to ask you, okay, can you introduce us to Grace and Sebastian? Can you give us the rundown of who they are, their character, everything?
Yeah, of course. So Grace and Sebastian are obviously the main characters in my story, Pucku. They're quite similar to each other in a few ways. You know, they're both very talented hockey players, and they're both extremely stubborn, which definitely fuels a lot of the tension and the drama in the story. But kind of taking a closer look at them individually, Grace is an older sister. She's kind of a perfectionist and a fixer. She really needs something to channel her energy into and focus on, because she doesn't like to deal with her own emotions and her own trauma. She is very confident. She's, someone who thrives, I think, socially. And you would think that because of that, she has, a lot of great friends. But on a deeper level, she's really terrified of kind of opening up and letting people in. And because of that, you see how it impacts, not only her, but the people around her in the story. And then you have Sebastian, and he is an only child. He's very laser focused when it comes to being the best at hockey. And he's really poured everything into this hockey career and, being the best on the ice. So he's extremely hardworking and dedicated. He is someone who likes to be in control of the situation. And even though he's in the spotlight because of his success in hockey, he doesn't like being the center of attention. He's not like a social butterfly. He's a little bit more introverted. And, as the story progresses, you see how his kind of single-minded pursuit of this hockey dream really starts to take a toll on all of the most important relationships in his life.
And I connect with him because I'm an only child. So I was like, child syndrome right here.
Yeah, no, he does play into that stereotype a little bit. But he grows throughout the book. And, when the book first starts, Grace has just transferred to a new school. She's really excited to play hockey in a more competitive conference with an even higher ranking team, but she kind of quickly realizes that there's some big discrepancies between the men and the women's hockey teams and, their facilities. And then meanwhile, Sebastian is just coming back from a huge injury that took him out for a season. And this is kind of his final year to prove himself on the ice and sign a contract with a team in the NHL. And when Grace starts to, make some noise and tries to address some of the gender inequality issues between the teams, it starts to kind of infringe on his practice time and his carefully laid plan and his peace of mind, because she's quite distracting. And they kind of find themselves locked in this rivalry both on and off the ice. And I think one thing I really like about both of them is that they're both flawed. I think sometimes I have beef with characters that are too perfect. It's just not real life. And so they're both perfectly flawed. And they do a lot of growing in the story, which I think is great.
I love that. Now I'm curious to know, kind of at this very time, is there something else you're working on? Are we going to get more from you?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on one of my other stories that is posted on Wattpad. It's called The Benefits of Sexting. Obviously, like I said, I like a bold title.
Love it.
I wrote this one right after Pucku. And this one, I'm so excited for this one. This is one of my favorite book boys that I've written.
Ooh, okay.
But the story follows this girl named Danny, and she's kind of down on her luck. She has a broken heart, and she doesn't really, she doesn't really understand why her perfect relationship fell apart, and things aren't really going her way. And then she gets this big piece of news. She learns that her 17-year-old sister is pregnant, and it kind of flips her life around even more. And she, her mom kind of gives her this ultimatum of, give up your dream of studying abroad, dream that, she's spent her whole life saving up for. She wants to go and study abroad her senior year, and, abandon your family or stay home and help, with your sister and the new baby. And it's a sucky ultimatum for sure. And things kind of get more complicated when she receives a mysterious, dirty text message, and she is thrown headfirst into Sawyer's life. And Sawyer is this kind of dirty mouth, bad boy, notorious guy around campus. And they kind of find themselves in this mutually beneficial agreement. And they kind of have this flirty friendship, and her relationship and time spent with Sawyer really helps her grow and kind of helps her, stand up for herself and take a bigger role in making decisions in her life. And yeah, I don't have as much of it done as I should. um, but that is what I'm working on currently. And then, after that is, when I want to start working on a series, probably like a fantasy or dystopian series. I have so many different ideas running around in my head, but yeah, exciting stuff to come.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can kind of already see like who you are. I can see who you are as an author, obviously from book one, but also just like seeing how you like title everything. I'm so excited for your overall author brand throughout the years. I just know I'm gonna like love every single one of them. They're gonna be all on my shelf immediately. So
No.
well, thank you so much for taking this time with me and answering all these questions and giving us a new book to obsess over and some new book boyfriends. I needed them. So excited. Also love the cover. Can I just say that? Like the colors, I was like immediately obsessed with that.
So pretty, so pretty. I love how much the title pops because, of course, that is my bread and butter. Want to shock some people with my titles. So
No, I love it. I remember when I saw it for the very first time, I literally was on Instagram and I went, wait, what did that say? Let's say, let me take a minute. So love it. You definitely accomplished the shock factor. And then the writing in general is just absolutely beautiful. So you have, like I said, you have the depth, you have the spice, you had it all. So loved it.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been wonderful speaking with you. I know you're so busy, so I really appreciate you taking time out of your crazy, hectic life, your a million books you're writing, your screenplay and everything. It's so fun. So thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.